Hello, and welcome to our second week on the theme of Rethinking Beliefs for Awakened. I bet that if you were to go and ask people what the most essential Christian beliefs are, one of the most common answers would be a belief in the afterlife. Specifically, a belief that if you live your life right, that if you're a good enough person, you'll reach a place of eternal reward and happiness, heaven. And that if you live your life wrongly, if you're a bad person, you'll reach a different kind of place, a place of eternal suffering, damnation, and punishment, hell. The whole problem with this is that it's not really biblical, particularly the notion of hell. And this week we need to rethink the entire concept of hell because it is not biblical. I myself am a bit agnostic about the whole concept of the afterlife, meaning that I just don't know if there is one or not. And if there is, I don't think we as human beings have an understanding of what that will be like. I really resonate with the words of theologian Marcus Borg, who has said, "Is there an afterlife? And if so, what will it be like? I don't have a clue. But I am confident that the God who has buoyed us in life will buoy us in death." We die into God. What more that means, I do not know, but that is all I need to know. That really resonates with me because I recognize that it is in God's hands and I can't control it. What I can control is my responses to situations in the here and now. So I choose to live my life as if there isn't an afterlife, as if this is what I've got in the here and now. And that works for me. Something different might work for you, but one thing that I can say for sure is that I don't think an afterlife will look like mansions in the sky if we're good and eternal punishment if we're bad. I think it's also incredibly important to say that the concept of hell simply is not in the Bible. Ancient Judaism did not believe in an afterlife. Most first century Jewish folks, like Jesus and his followers, would not have believed in an afterlife, and Jews today don't believe in an afterlife. That means that Jesus almost certainly was not talking about an afterlife whenever he was preaching. He certainly was not talking about a place of eternal damnation and punishment. But you may say, didn't Jesus talk about hell? Well, not really. What Jesus talked about was a literal place called Gehenna, which is translated into English as hell, but was not this place of eternal suffering after you die. Gehenna was a literal place outside the walls of Jerusalem. It was strongly associated in first century Judaism with pagan child sacrifice, where children may have been burned at the altar. It was a place that was thought of as the worst place you could be, a place where you were distant from God. Some scholars also argue that there may have been trash from Jerusalem burned there as well. It's difficult to say, but it's a place that was associated with fire in those two ways, and it was thought to be a place where you were separated from God. When Jesus talks about being in Gehenna, he is using a mental image for the worst place that people in his context would have been able to think about. A place that literally felt like you were separated from God. And so Jesus uses this as a way to get people to understand what it is like to be separated from God, to not embrace the values of the reign of God, love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, that if we don't embrace those things, it's like living in Gehenna. It is like creating a Gehenna on earth, when we are called to create the reign of God on earth, in which peace reigns and justice for those on the margins is supreme. I think that a lot of times folks latch on to the notion of hell in particular because it helps to reinforce behavior, which is why churches have liked the idea of hell, and it provides a sense of retribution for those whom we might consider our enemy. But here's the thing. Jesus told us to love our enemies, to work for reconciliation and forgiveness, recognizing that that's not always possible, but Jesus called us to love absolutely everybody, not to wish eternal suffering on them. That, in fact, is Gehenna in and of itself, because we are called to reform our hearts to radical love. The Christian spiritual practice is to desire happiness for ourselves and for others, which leads us to this week's spiritual practice. I invite you to go through this spiritual practice with me, to find a quiet place to be, perhaps a sacred space for you, but a quiet place where you can engage in a bit of meditation. And so I encourage you to place your feet flat on the floor, as I will do now, perhaps to fold your hands and place them in your lap, sit in a comfortable position, and to begin breathing meditation, centering yourself and breathing in and out. Breathe in and out. And let all thoughts fade away as you focus simply on your breath. Feel the air fill your lungs, and then release. And as you come to a place of centeredness, I invite you to picture someone in your life who is difficult. Perhaps not someone who has caused you major harm, but someone who is difficult to be around, someone who challenges you to love. Focus on that person. Think about how it is that they have made you feel. And acknowledge those feelings perhaps of hurt, or of sadness, or of anger. Breathe in those feelings. Breathe in those feelings and try to exhale feelings of forgiveness and peace. Breathe in the feelings of hurt and sadness, pain, and out forgiveness and peace. And now think about that person and try to wish them happiness and joy. Envision them finding happiness, and envision the two of you reconciling. Return to your breath. In and out. In and out. And return to this space. And note how you feel. As you engage in this practice this week, try to do this more than just right now, and perhaps spend a bit more time in meditation, allowing yourself to sit with your feelings, and to spend extended time imagining joy for another person. As I said, perhaps not with someone who has deeply wronged you. That may be something that you need to deal with in a different way, but someone who is difficult in your life. It may be that that reconciliation never happens, but practicing compassion, picturing joy, and really centering on loving even one's enemy can be incredibly powerful for our souls. Reconciliation may never actually happen, but it is powerful. I am thinking of a time when I had a neighbor who was particularly difficult in my life, and we just never really got along. And I started practicing this wishing of compassion for her. And it helped me to understand all that was going on in her life, the struggles that she was going through that led her to be a difficult person for me in my life. And though we never became fast friends, we were able to reach a point where we got along because I was able to extend compassion towards her in a way that I wasn't before I began this practice. The Christian life calls us to wish reconciliation and forgiveness for this world, and not just to wish it, but to really practice it, and certainly to practice loving even our enemies. May this spiritual practice be meaningful to you this week as you let go of the idea of hell and practice loving even your enemies. May it be so.